Did you guys have to like duck really down to your knees too during that first part?
Not so low. I'm shorter than you, so I don't
Yeah.
Watch your guys' heads, especially here. We call these rocks the noggin knockers.
Noggin knockers.
Hopefully you don't find out why.
Hear that, guys?
What?
The noggin knockers. Watch your heads.
Why? Do rocks fall?
No. You just said, like, don't hit your head on the rocks.
Oh, okay.
Dang, especially that one. Literally on my butt right now. Dang.
A little bit bigger in the main room.
Just a little.
Hello.
Echo!
Woo!
Hello.
Someone responds.
I was about to say. It's happened. Alright guys, well welcome to what we call level 3. Right now you are about 6.5 stories deeper than when you started. So this is initially when those miners would have popped out. That would have been right about here. This ledge is the other side of that hole we were looking down.
Oh.
Now remember how I said the miners abandoned it for about 70 years? Well, it was after those 70 years in the 1920s that someone else figured out how to make money off of this place. You guys are part of that. It was tourism. In 1920, we started doing tours here. So next year, we'll have been doing tours for about a century in Moaning Caverns. So imagine a century of human impact on a cave like this. You actually don't have to imagine it. I have it right here for you. This whole wall here was initially the place they staged all tours. There were just some wooden planks sitting on metal stakes on the wall here. So anyone who came in, well, so you wouldn't fall down, you'd be holding onto the wall, right? That's how we have this lovely kind of weird waxy sheen going on. This is our fault. This is 100 years of high fives right there. And this is the one place in the cave you're allowed to touch. So feel free to come on up, give that a high five. This whole wall, in fact, is completely open to you guys. Right there is a column. And over here are some draperies that are actually hollow. So if you knock on either of these three, you can actually get a little rock music going. Now, the earliest kind of tour that we had, they take you down to this platform here, and the metal stairs hadn't been installed yet. So right where you see these kind of anchor points on the wall, well, there was a winch attached right there. And at the end of the rope, wound around that winch, was a bucket that went down right here. So supposedly for a nickel, they'd lower you to the cave floor in a bucket. Now keep in mind, from here to that floor, it's 100 feet right now, a full 10 stories. And here was the catch to the bucket tour. Supposedly, 5 cents to go down, 25 cents to come back up.
No.
For some reason, they weren't making all the money they were expecting. So 2 years after they started doing tours, this guy was built. This was built in 1922. And as you go down this, know that this was actually built out of old World War I battleships. In particular, a ship that seems to have been scrapped in the place that this metal was derived from at the time this was being built was the Wisconsin. So we're not completely sure it's that ship, but this is likely bits of that one. The builder, Albert Tangeman, built this instead of a giant wooden staircase, which would have just rotted and fallen apart down here. It's pretty stable. I'm not too worried about it. It can hold at least 2 people at a time, so we will all be going down it in just a moment. Before that, though, I did want to point out some of these formations. There's a few visible from here that are beautiful. One of the most famous is good old stalactite here. This particular one is called the Pendulum. Now, stalactites, stalagmites, two of the most famous types of cave formations, are actually really, really easy to tell apart. See, stalactites, they're found on the ceiling, so they get a C in their name, stalac. And of course, they're hanging tight to the ceiling. Whereas stalagmites, like that one right there, they're hanging out on the ground, so they get a G in their name, stalag. And then they might one day reach the ceiling, because that's stalagmite and tight growing at the same time, which means eventually you'll get a meetup, and at that point you get a stalagphyte. Now once we've done that, we actually get a whole new formation. We get to column a column. That's exactly what's happened right here. This is a column, a stalactite met with a stalagmite and formed this beautiful structure. All of this stuff is just the mineral calcite. Over the years, water has ground through the limestone here. Limestone's really, really soluble in rainwater, so it eats away at that limestone and carries that mineral onto the walls where it dries. And as we head down the stairs, if you look off to the side, you're gonna see the chocolate waterfall here. It's gonna follow us all the way down. It's 140 feet tall, the tallest flowstone formation in here. And that kind of brownish color, it's actually from an iron deposit in the ceiling. As water flows, rusts that iron, deposits that rust everywhere you see. All right, you guys ready for the stairs?
Yeah.
All right, let's start heading down. I'm gonna point out a couple of things from the stairs that are pretty cool looking, some other draperies that are exceptional.
Wanna go
Yeah.
Okay. Just in case.
Is there still water trickling down?
Yes, occasionally. We're a little bit less wet this year than we were in previous years, but as we get into winter, hopefully get more rain. A lot of water flowing in here. There were points last winter I actually had to yell over the sound of the water pouring into the cave.
Oh, that's cool.
Guys, a couple of things I wanted to point out from here. First, here's the cave bacon. These are draperies that have actually formed on the chocolate waterfalls. They have some of that rust in their layers. You get these beautiful curtains of minerals. Utterly gorgeous. I love these guys. And then right off to your left, we have the leaning wall. So this big old wedge of rock is in fact the top of a giant sheet of stone hanging off of the cave wall. Fortunately, it's pretty well cemented. It's not going to be moving anytime soon. But that's a good 80 feet high or so. 70 to 80 feet high.
Am I going too slow?
No, you're good. How you doing, Martin?
Pretty good. Nice and quiet.
Yeah.
I thought there would be other people. Other tours? It's just like, you got the private tour.
Yeah, reserved. And he already made it down.
Yeah, I remember walking down these stairs.
They were bigger than I remember,
Definitely, and like much longer.
but probably because we were smaller.
Yeah. Oh, I remember those benches.
I remember there's like a pool of water somewhere.
Guys, you made it. You're now standing 165 feet deep. Actually, right now, you're probably standing right underneath your car.
Oh.
Its position. I think about it. Probably right about here. So when you came in today, you actually parked on top of the cave. The whole parking lot there is the roof of the cave.
Dang.
Fortunately, there's a good 30, 40 feet of stone in the ceiling, some soil on top of that, so nothing to worry about in terms of collapse. I bet you guys might be wondering now that I mentioned that about earthquakes, or maybe you even were beforehand. Was anyone wondering about that?
No.
No.
No? Really? First, normally there's like one or two people on my tour who are like, what about earthquakes? It's very rare that no one is. You guys live happy lives. So now that I mentioned it, you're probably kind of curious about it.
Yeah.
This is actually the place to be in an earthquake. We know that for a couple of reasons. First of all, check this out. So right up there on the wall, we have what's called the angel wing drapery. That drapery in particular, very, very thin, about as thick as 2 potato chips put together. Which means it's thin enough that that light can shine right on through it. Now, that delicacy and its age, estimated to be about 140,000 years old, lead us to believe that no earthquakes have actually affected this cavern in that time. If they have, it probably not be up there on the wall still. Incidentally, this guy up here, the Pendulum, which by the way, 14 feet tall, is also about 140,000 years old. So the 2 formations most likely to be affected by earthquakes, neither of them have been affected in the last 140,000 years. Almost as if something did happen 140,000 years ago. But who knows? Now, that being said, even though this kind of tells us earthquakes haven't affected us very much, there has been an earthquake while people were in the cave on the tour. Happened in 1989, year of the Loma Prieta quake. It was actually a 4 o'clock tour down here. Supposedly, they didn't even know the Loma Prieta had occurred until they made their way back up and realized everyone was gone because they'd been evacuated. They didn't have any way of knowing down here that that was what was happening. So nothing happening in the cave, a bunch happening on the surface. There's a lot to see. I want to kind of point out some.
And that's the expedition place, right?
Yeah, that's where the expedition goes. I was just down there on Saturday. Yeah, Saturday. You start in the big black hole right there, which is why the rope is here. This is the bone pile. This is where all of the bones that are in that glass case were found. Now, in the 20s, when they were starting tours here and building this platform, they started to realize that there were actually human bones here. Now, obviously, they didn't want people taking those up out of the cave, so it got declared a burial site, meaning legally, we can't take bones out of here anymore. So any bones that are found, they stay. Like that kneecap right there. That kind of round knob right where the dark part of my flashlight is. Mm-hmm. That is in fact a human kneecap. Back here you can see some bone-colored bits. That is more bones, kind of hard to identify them from here. And then under where that red rope is, it's out of our sight, but it's kind of sitting in the cleft of the rock, is part of a human skull. Now you guys will notice there's a rope that keeps going right there. So you start doing the expedition there, and you kind of crawl into what's called the lower mud flats, up through Joe's Adventure, into the breakdown room. Joe's Adventure is the first really tight part of that tour. You do get into a very small space. So if someone realizes that, turns out they are claustrophobic, well, then you get to the breakdown room and use that room according to its name. And there was a lady who I said, "Welcome to the breakdown room." And she started sobbing, so she was having a little bit of a hard day. At that point, people can actually just straight up exit the expedition. There's a tunnel called Claustrophobia Corner, and it pops out right here. So you don't have to go the whole distance. There's some stuff you're missing out on later on, but you get a lot of good stuff just doing this part. Of course, it does keep on going. You squeeze from the breakdown room into the meat grinder. At the end of the meat grinder is the guillotine. After the guillotine, you drop into a deep, dark hole into the pancake room. From the pancake room, you have to squeeze out of the pancake squeeze. If you guys go back up, on those pictures on the wall, there's someone going into the pancake squeeze, and it's the person who's doing the limbo, and you can't see their shoulders or head, because the pancake squeeze, it's about that high, and you have to go up through it on your back. So a whole distance through, this is where the ceiling is.
Dang.
It's actually probably the most comfortable spot in the whole tour, believe it or not. There's a place where if you get your back into it just right, it feels very relaxing. Now, after the pancake squeeze, you get to the best named thing down there, the birth canal.
Oh.
Squeeze up through about a 13-foot slope. That's maybe that angle. Pretty tight. You need the rope going up through it. And right after that, you pop at the bottom of Godzilla's nostril here.
Godzilla's nostril.
Godzilla's nostril. And this is the official exit to the expedition. This is where everyone's aiming to get to. There is, however, an alternative exit. You crawl up here into what's called the conference room. Then there's a tunnel back here that leads to the bottom of the 40-foot chimney climb called Santa's Worst Nightmare. Then you climb up behind the rock, pop out on the top of Wedgie Hill. At that point, your guide ties a rope around your waist and you slide down.
Why'd they call it the conference room?
You can actually see right at the top of Wedgie Hill, E.T. the extraterrestrial's face peeking down at us.
Oh yeah.
You've got the T-Rex from Jurassic Park. Some people see Jaws instead. Got Jabba right here. Now, this is actually really interesting. This is officially called the Igloo. It's a stalagmite about the size of a 2-story building with a small attic in it. It's about 25 feet tall. Right now, it doesn't look like it at all because it's a good 30, 40 feet away. Now, that's actually a really, really interesting effect of being in a cave. Your depth perception stops behaving. So like the Igloo there only looks maybe 40 feet tall, 30, 40 feet.
Yeah, not 2
It's a little
stories.
bigger or smaller. Here's a really good example of that. As honestly as you can, tell me, how tall do you think the T-Rex up there really is? And that's from these draperies to the top of the dome. How big is that?
10, 15?
10, 15? I think that's a fair guess. That's what my brain wants it to be, about 10, 15 feet tall.
Guessing it's wrong.
It's only a yard shorter than the Igloo. It's 22 feet tall.
Dang.
Yeah. It doesn't look like it because it's about 100 feet away. So you could lay these stairs over towards that and they would just about be scraping against it. So yeah, this is a much bigger room than you think. The Statue of Liberty could actually fit right here. So if you put her toes right back there in the corner and have her kind of stretch across the cavern, let me get this cap back on. Her torch would fit up into this corner. And almost as if to commemorate that, you can actually see her shadow on the wall. Torch, head, body. You guys see that?
Yeah.
Also see how dim my flashlight is up there compared to right here? This is a massive, massive space. Now, something I really want to do, I have a candle lit for a reason.
This is what I've been waiting for.
We're going to see this place as the miners would have. I would recommend sitting on the benches or holding onto a railing for this part.
Okay. We gonna see stars?
Oh, not. That's not a good sign. Yeah, those miners wouldn't have had any fancy electric lights. Not had anything, just with candy. Okay, would have looked considerably different.
Dang. And no guide rails either.
Imagine coming down here looking for gold with your candle here. Keep in mind this would have been held in your mouth on the way down. You hold this up and you start peeking around for any little reflections of golden light. You see the Igloo up there, maybe start to believe the Miwoks who told you about cave monsters. Looking around, you're not seeing anything. You don't realize it yet, but that is because there's no gold in here. Why don't you guys look behind you there?